You're probably wondering what this is all about. Well, I will tell you in a second, but let me get this off of me because it's a little uncomfortable. And to give you some context, I have been doing training in mindfulness for long-term health conditions, including chronic pain. Training with Vidyamalia Birch, who's really one of the experts in this field. She's over in England and started a program called Breathworks a couple of decades ago, and has published several books on the topic. And I'm learning quite a bit, and I want to make some videos to share what I'm learning about mindfulness and pain and how it applies to tinnitus. So today I want to talk about two very basic concepts that are relevant to both pain and tinnitus, and that is the body and the brain. Now actually there is several research articles talking about the connection between tinnitus and chronic pain. And I'll put a link to one or two of those in the notes for today. But I mean, conceptually, even if you didn't know anything about the brain science involved, you could conceptually see the connection in that these are both conditions that are inherently unpleasant. There is a point at which medical science can no longer alter them. For tinnitus, that's obvious, and for pain, I mean, either there's some pain that is beyond the reach of medication, or people may decide the side effects of medication are not worth the reduction in pain. And so what we're left with at that point is not altering the pain or the tinnitus, but having to work with how we respond to the pain and the tinnitus. And mindfulness has been around working with tinnitus for more than 4 decades. In fact, Jon Kabat-Zinn first started the program of mindfulness-based stress reduction working with folks with chronic pain, and just released a book last year discussing called something like Mindfulness for Pain. And again, I'll put some information on that, and I've talked about that book elsewhere on these videos. But let's talk about what I got out of this class and how this might be able to be applied for tinnitus. And first thing I want to talk about is our thoughts about tinnitus, which are a separate component from the tinnitus itself. And this is what I was getting at with that setup I had at the beginning, which is taken from Vidyamalia Birch, a demonstration she does. And it goes like this. So this, imagine, is your tinnitus, and or your pain, and okay, you got to carry it around, and it's always got to be with you. And now these series of books, imagine, are your thoughts about tinnitus. I can't stand the tinnitus. I can't live like this. I'm going to go crazy. How am I going to sleep? What's going to happen to my family? How am I going to work? And pretty soon, it gets pretty uncomfortable and fairly, heavy. And I certainly can't move around with these additional weights. But fortunately, I can just take these and, that felt good, throw off those thoughts. And then now I'm left with my tinnitus, which, feels a lot lighter when those thoughts aren't bugging me. And that's what we do with mindfulness, is we learn to work with our thoughts about tinnitus, not wiping away our thoughts, but learning to work skillfully with them so we don't carry them around with us every breathing moment of the day. And here again, Vidyamalia does a nice enactment and talking about the different ways we can be with our thoughts. And she will have one person come over and play the role of our thoughts. And I don't have anybody here, so you have to use your imagination. But imagine someone coming over here and talking to you about your tinnitus. Well, I can't I can't live like this. And you push them away. And it comes right back, and you push them away. And it comes right back, and you push them away. And this is what happens when we think we can just kind of, ignore our thoughts, or when we get frustrated with them or try to, shut them out. Is, as the saying goes, what we resist persists, and it really gets stronger and stronger. And there's another way to work with our thoughts, which is simply to get lost in them, overwhelmed by them. And here Vidmayu, who's in a wheelchair, she knows of where she speaks of chronic pain. She starts wheeling around, and the thought follows her around. I can't live like this. I can't take this. And then she starts kind of listening to it and getting lost in it. And she winds up, just going in circles in that wheelchair, which is what can happen when we get lost in a thought. And for the final presentation, I'm thinking of Goldilocks and the Three Bears for some reason. This is too hot, this is too cold. And what happens, and just right, is a number of people come in, and one will walk by and say, oh, I can't live with this pain or tinnitus. And she says, thank you, thought. And the thought just walks by. How am I going to work like this? Thank you, thought. And the thought just walks by. What if I can't get to sleep? Thank you, thought. And the thought just walks by. So we can work with thoughts in this way, and this is a mindful approach to our thoughts, is that we acknowledge them, and when we acknowledge them, they will go their own way. We don't have to fight with them, we don't have to engage them, we don't have to get lost in them. But the mindful path is simply to sit, notice thoughts, and come back to our present moment experience. When we're meditating, we use the breath. When we're out in the world, whatever else we happen to be doing, we just simply acknowledge the thought, come back. So that's the part that talks about how we use this insight from working with our pain to working with tinnitus. A lot more is done, however, in working with the body. And she's really big on relaxing the body as a way to deal with pain. Noting that she starts with this image, and she says, make a fist. Says, what do you notice? She says, the first thing you notice is that you're not breathing, probably. And it's also really tight. And if you breathe, breathing opens it up and loosens the system. And that pain, the claim is if we're in a more relaxed position, the pain is not as intense, it lessens, rather than when we are tensed against it, in which case there is a knot in addition to the pain, the knot adding to the pain, the tightness. And so we want to do a lot of work on relaxing the body, and this is done primarily or mainly with the breath. I'll talk a little bit about the breath in a second, but we also know, again, with respect to our tinnitus, that it is we're dealing with an activated sympathetic nervous system, and we need as well to work with relaxation practices. And one of the things I took away from the first class is that our concept of the breath is actually very narrow, I guess is one way to look at it. We'd think about the breath as maybe coming in our chest or in our belly, but actually there are an expanded sense of what is going on with the breath. So there's actually 4 or 5 diaphragmatic elements in the body that are responding with the breath. And again, I'll put a link to a video that, although it's not in English, it's a very visual image of where in the body the breath is expanding. And it starts with the pelvis and goes to the belly where the diaphragm is, and it's also movement in the back, then the back of the throat, and then actually at the top of inside the brain there is actual movement, which we probably don't sense, but it's there. So we're expanding our notion of the breath in order to bring the body in a state of calmness. And if we can imagine the breath, and she uses these 5 points, she talks about butt, belly, back, base of the skull, and brain, if you want to have 5 points to consider as we try to breathe. And we'll do a little practice here. Just trying to imagine the breath expanding and holding the breath, thinking of the breath as coming, starting in the pelvis and feeling the pelvis rise and fall as we breathe. And then going up, sensing the belly, the diaphragm there, expanding and contracting. Not losing the sense of the pelvis or the buttocks, but stretching the breath from pelvis to diaphragm. And then feeling the breath in the back. The ribs at the back expanding as well with the breath. Again, expanding that sense from the pelvis to the diaphragm to the back. And then there's also movement at the back of our throat, collapsing and expanding, and sensing that. Spreading that out to the top of the brain. The covering of the brain is actually a membrane that moves with the breath. So just feeling that breath, this expanded notion of the breath, using the breath to calm the body. It's one of the most important things that is done in the work with chronic pain. And it also needs to be part of working with tinnitus. We know that those with tinnitus are in sympathetic fight or flight more than the general population. So it becomes necessary to find mechanisms to calm the body down, and working with the breath. Slow breath practice, which you can do anytime, anywhere. Just feeling the breath in the body, feeling the entirety of the breath. And bringing that awareness to relax your body. So that's the insight from this week's pain and mindfulness class, and we'll be updating with whatever I can take away from this class to work with your tinnitus. Okay.